A new survey conducted by the Young Pharmacists Group 1PG has revealed that 80% of individuals charged with the responsibility of dispensing drugs at level 4 hospitals in Kenya are not trained pharmacists. The survey also reveals that drugs in 70% of level 5 hospitals are dispensed by people who are licensed but not qualified to do so.
The YPG team said it went through data of 535 level 4 and 80 level 5 hospitals listed on the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council website, adding that 8 out of 10 level 4 hospitals are non-compliant. Of the 535 hospitals surveyed, some 424 are non-compliant and only 50 follow the required standards, while 61 hospitals have no records. Joining us this morning to discuss the outcome of this survey is Dr. Davji Bimjiatela. He's the Secretary General, Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Atela.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Now, how frightening, are these findings? And shouldn't this be alarming generally across Kenya at this point?
The findings are actually very alarming, and the fact that it was done based on the websites of the regulator, it was authenticated. It then indicates that majority and many of the Kenyans then are faced with conditions, problems of medication, because the persons that are entrusted in most of the level 4 facilities that ideally, as per the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, need to be regulated by a pharmacist is not regulated by a SO. And also many of the facilities in the country, including the dispensing pharmacies in the towns and the cities, just employ anybody who can give the drugs. So that becomes a big impediment to healthcare service delivery, because ideally it then means that a person can go to the hospitals and get prescribed particular drug that is necessary for treatment, but the person who is going to dispense the drugs, since they're not qualified to do so, or they're not having the requisite skills, that problem exists, and the person who is going to suffer out of that is the public. And this information has gone around, and it is something that has been put even to the council and to the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, which regulates the same. And this is happening because annually in the country produces about 200-300 pharmacists per year. But there's no employment of the pharmacists that are graduating, and that's why most of the facilities will not have them, will not have those who have not employed. And some few of the facilities, they then look for alternative mechanisms to get non-qualified staff.
So who is this blame, or who is to blame in this situation if we're saying that a number of pharmacists who have graduated, there are no facilities to employ them, therefore some of these hospitals and medical institutions then go for the unqualified? Who is to blame? Would we say maybe that there isn't strong, or there aren't strong regulatory bodies to be able to ensure that this does not happen? Where does the blame lie?
I think the blame squarely lies on two parts. It is number one, we have the hospitals that are level 4 and are accredited as level 4. And therefore, when the regulatory councils give them the level 4 status, they should confirm that they actually have qualified medical practitioners, qualified pharmacists, and qualified dentists in their facilities. So the part of the blame goes to the regulatory facilities that accredit hospitals as level 4. The second one goes then to also the Pharmacy and Poisons Board that actually need to ensure that before the pharmacy operates in such facilities, they must have the pharmacist. So therefore, this also becomes an issue, because when you license somebody who is below the level of the facility that they need to have, then that becomes a problem. The third part is to the investors. You realize that in the country, 1% of the investment in pharmacy is done by the pharmacist. The other 33% is by the pharmacy's assistants. Then about 66% of it are the businessmen and women. And therefore, what it means is that they will go for any cheap labor that will make service provisions be going on. And therefore, this data then sensitizes the public that if you go to the hospital, or if you go to the pharmacy, you must really check that the person giving you these drugs is qualified and they're giving the right drugs that are prescribed. So that is what is the rallying call. And the overall blame then will be to the government, because the government has not put up the right mechanisms that will will wipe out quacks and the the people who are not qualified to actually handle the medicines. This happens across in the pharmacy professions and also in the medical professions, where those who are not qualified are able to survive within the system. And therefore, there need to be a very serious action to anyone who has been found to be really operating in such particular manner.
I'm also wondering, like, why it's come to this level where we're having numbers as high as 80% of level 4 hospitals. Obviously, it would seem that there aren't strong punitive measures. So would you maybe share with us if there are punitive measures, if some hospitals are going to be losing their licenses for this?
As a union, we are looking at it that we want the regulatory bodies, both the council, the medical council, and the board, and even these facilities that were found to really not be having a qualified staff, to be accountable. And the only way is to see that when we actually do another check together with the young pharmacists and together with the teams, we see that they actually employed those particular staff or they deny the license to operate. Otherwise, then they will just have a few discussions for a few days and then continue with their finding ways of doing the business. So that's what we as a union are taking into place to ensure that there's actual actions to those who are endangering the lives of the public by not having the qualified personnel to offer the services of the pharmacist.
Now, I also want to understand how much risk this, of course, puts to Kenyans. Are these persons, now you said that they're unqualified. Are they meant to give any type of medical advice? Are they meant to be trained in a specific way so that they basically know the type of drugs to dispense? Or is it okay, if you're simply just helping to dispense drugs to patients or to customers? What is the level of risk that this, of course, puts to Kenyans who take drugs from these persons?
Ideally, when a patient goes to the pharmacy and is being given drugs, there are a lot of things that are there surrounding the patient counseling, basically the medication. You must tell the person a lot about the drugs, the adherence of the drugs, the bioavailability of the drugs, depending on how you take it and the duration of the drugs. And this comes only when you understand the drug beyond just being a particular component in the shelves. And that's why there's a clear-cut regulations on when you are in level 4 facilities, then you're handling patients who have actually been treated and who have different conditions that need special care, that need care that the drugs that are going to be given must be understood by the person giving them. So it then means that there's high possibility of the aspect of polypharmacy, somebody being given many drugs than he actually deserves. There's those aspects of somebody being given drugs with with a wrong dosing. There's a situation whereby you cannot identify medical errors or you cannot identify the drug interactions with the person that is taking them. This can only be identified by qualified personnel. And therefore the public and the patient risk suffering conditions or other deaths that would otherwise be prevented by proper medication practice. And that's why there's need. And the statistics that have actually come out clearly that wrong medicine use, if there's no control and there's no pure supervisions, can even result into antimicrobial resistance, which is quite common in the country, in Africa now, so and even in the world. So that's why it is important that the persons who are handling the drugs and who are dispensing them must have the knowledge on their action and the procedure for their use. But when we just take anybody who ideally is not trained for the same and then give them the work of the pharmacist, then that's where we're going to have the medical-related issues, medical-related problems. Yes.
Just as we wrap up the conversation, can you share with us the ratio from pharmacists to citizens that we have in Kenya? Would you say that we have sufficient? I know you'd mentioned earlier that there aren't enough systems to absorb them. But would you say that we have sufficient? And do you also face the challenge of seeing a lot of migration, as we've seen in several parts of the continent, where medical professionals are migrating to the West?
Ideally, if you look, for example, our union, it represents the medical practitioners, the pharmacists, and the dentists. We have a shortage of all these cadres in the country for over a period, probably since independence of the country. But for the last 5 years, there's been a deliberate action by the government not to employ the practitioners, the doctors who graduate. And therefore, As we speak, currently we have about 1,000 pharmacists that are unemployed. You have about 2,500 medical practitioners who are unemployed. You have about 500 dentists who are unemployed. But these are unemployed amid the shortage in the public facilities. They are also employed amid the private facilities not employing them. So therefore, the only options that most of them have been having is to migrate from the country to overseas for greener pastures. And this happens at the expense of the public, of operation of the public facilities and the private facilities. And that's why we see the situation where we are in, where many private facilities would consider employing those who are underqualified, and again, also the public also will do the same. It's not only in the private sector, actually. And that's what is happening. We have unlimited numbers. That means it will take the country over 20 to 30 years to get the right number of the pharmacists, the right number of the medical practitioners, the right number of even the dentists, but even the limited existence are not employed. And therefore, that's what is actually making both the public and the private healthcare to be dysfunctional.
All right, very interesting there. But of course, obviously, a lot of work needs to be done by the health ministry in Kenya to clean up those aspects. But we, of course, would love to speak with you again, Doctor. Thanks for joining us, and of course, have a great week ahead. We'll be speaking with you again.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.